start.
Yeah, he has also joined.
Okay, great.
Shall we start, sir?
Yeah, so you let me know. Yeah, perfect. Okay, you're going to start, Sangeeta, or you can start?
Yes, sir, I'm starting, sir. A very good afternoon to all the dignitaries, guests, and participants. I extend my warm welcome to all presented here on the second day of third edition of India Gaming Show and Conference 2021 being organized by CII in association with Indian Digital Gaming Society and supported by Department of Science and Technology, Department of Electronics and IT, and Departments of Information and Broadcasting, Government of India. The theme of this edition is Gaming for Good, Build in India, Build for the World. The conference along with the show is being hosted on the CII Hive digital platform, a dedicated multi-feature virtual online platform with a 24/7 help desk and a digital B2B lounge. Before we begin today's program, I would like to take this opportunity to thank our partner, Google, Western Digital, Jet Synthesis Private Limited, Synthetic Scientific Games, Hangama Games, Nordwind Gamings, ASUS, Critical XE Export, Game.tv, and our content partner KPMG for extending their support. Currently, over 100 participants are attending this session both through CI Hive and YouTube. Further, I request all the participants to visit the virtual exhibition at the CI Hive anytime or in the next 9 days. Before we begin our first panel discussion of today, I request all the speakers to keep their mic on mute and unmute while speaking. I also request participants to pose their questions in a Q&A session. We will take them up towards the end of the session. The first session of the day is a panel discussion on catalyst for change, role of states and regulator in the gaming industry. The session will focus on how regulator can create a vibrant ecosystem of game developer, studios, and publisher in India through policies, regulation, and the interaction between industry and state for the same. The panel discussion will be moderated by Mr. Rajan Nawani, President, India Digital Gaming Society, and Vice Chairman and Managing Director, Jetline Group of Companies. The other esteemed panelists for the session are Dr. A.K. Garg, International Cooperation, Bilateral and Multilateral Division, Ministry of Electronics and IT, Government of India, Mr. Jitendra Vijay, CEO, Metis Startup Hub, Government of India, Mr. Biren Ghosh, Country Head, Technicolor, Mr. T.V. Balaji, Global Games Industry Leader, Berlin. With this, I now request Mr. Nawani to take the panel discussion forward. Mr. Nawani, please. Over to you, Mr. Nawani.
Thank you, Sangeeta. So very good afternoon to all of you, ladies and gentlemen, in India. And, we have been joined and we are bringing different sets of audiences in from around the world. So I'd also like to welcome our guests from Europe and from the rest of Asia for this session today. The session today is really going to talk of, what is the role of state and regulators in the gaming industry. And I think the reason we are having a conversation on this subject is because I think we are at a very critical juncture in the emergence of the gaming industry in a country like India. A global industry which is worth about $170 billion today, led primarily by the US and China, followed by Japan and Korea. The Indian gaming total contribution to the global gaming industry is sub $1 billion today. So while India is a country where the maximum number of games on mobile have been downloaded in the past year, nearly 13% of the total downloaded games in the world were downloaded in India. The monetization or the contribution of the Indian gaming industry to the rest of the world is sub $1 billion. And also that's the equivalent amount, which is the contribution to our country. A point to note is that the gaming industry today is at a size and scale that is larger than the entire music and the Hollywood and Bollywood industry combined together. So I think the opportunity of growth in an industry such as this, as we were to move forward is very significant. And I think for a country like India, it particularly becomes significant because the ability for it to create livelihoods is also a very large factor that a country like India could benefit from. So if you look at it, gaming requires professionals and skill sets from multiple areas. Whether it is graphics, whether it is art, whether it is engineering, whether it is design. And then as we see the emergence of gaming moving towards e-sport, the whole funnel of a casual gamer becoming a mid-core core gamer and then an e-sport player, we find that it unlocks again a large number of opportunities for people as tournament organizers, casters, many other media plays that will come alongside that. So I think if we take the overall industry of gaming and esports together, we feel this ecosystem can become a very large driver of change, particularly for the new gen, particularly for the young youthful India, where of course, as we know, even the passion for gaming aligns with the livelihoods, that people can generate. And what can be better than so I think we are at a critical juncture, as I mentioned, in CII, the Confederation of Indian Industry has been seriously looking at this sector to see how we can, make this an important frontline sector. It is with that thought that the Indian Digital Gaming Society was formed to be able to bring multiple stakeholders to come together to be able to, discuss, share, and be able to engage with one another as we go about to build this industry. So I think the role of government, the role of the state, the role of the developers, the role of the other players that are creating large employment in this sector, the role of the gamers themselves is a big one as we decide how the future of this industry will get shaped. And I think today we are indeed very privileged to have with us four very eminent panelists. All the panelists come with very rich, diverse experience, and I think we couldn't have asked for a better platform or a better conversation on this subject, rather than having these panelists. So I'd like to, welcome Dr. Garg, who is, from the Ministry of Electronics and IT, Mr. Jitendra Vijay, who is the METI Startup Hub CEO from, again, Government of India, Viren Ghosh, the country head of Technicolor, and TV Balaji, who's a global games industry leader in Berlin and has worked with many governments around the world to, understand how the policy and state has been influenced there in those countries when it comes to gaming. So with that, what I would like to do is maybe have each one of you, share some opening comments, and then basis of the discussions and the points that are raised by all, you get into a little deeper Q&A. I'd also like to request the Secretariat to raise some questions from the audience. And when we do have, maybe the last 10 minutes, we'll try and take up questions from the audience as well. So to get this started, I'm going to request Balaji, who has worked in many parts of Europe and, representing very large, Western studios, talking to different governments on what is the role that, governments are playing in many of the more developed countries when it comes to gaming as a sector. And what have been some of the key learnings? Maybe Balaji, can you share some of that, as we start the session?
Sure. Thanks, Rajan, and thanks, Sangeeta, for the introduction. Just to add a little bit more context to the very honorable title of a global games industry leader, I would like to give the context of what I've done, especially my last engagement in the Indian games industry was when I was the VP of BD for Dhruva, which was acquired by Rockstar, and especially I was looking after international strategic alliances and partnerships. We were very actively looking at acquiring studios, and the route we decided to take was to work with government agencies to understand more. And that after that, I've been a consultant to leadership teams around the world for gaming industry in specific. And this did give me the opportunity to work with government agencies, bodies, and all kinds of teams which facilitate the change in these industries. To try to encompass this vast topic into 2 or 3 examples, I would like to give this real life examples of what I have encountered, which I think had a positive impact on these gaming clusters, right? the first that comes to my mind is something called the Dutch Game Garden, which is an incubator and a business center in the Netherlands. So what this started was as a government-funded project, which basically just gave one building which housed 40 game studios. So they gave a subsidized, the incubation program was obviously free, but if someone passed the incubation program, they continue to stay there for a subsidized cost. Their mission was simple, just to create job opportunities and economic growth for the gaming industries, right? In Netherlands. And they did this through basically four things. One was the incubation, the agency, then the events, and the games monitor. So a very evolved example that comes to my mind where the government was so integrated and involved was they have something called the Indigo Showcase, where they showcase the best games of the year around in an arcade, and including they represent like in major games events around the world. And I remember this event when after GDC, which is the biggest games event in the world, they set up the arcade in the Embassy of Netherlands, and the ambassador of Netherlands personally invited publishers and all kinds of stakeholders to the embassy for a brunch, and facilitated like the networking and meetings among these people with the local ecosystem. It was that involved, right, which made the small gaming companies network with bigger publishers or investors or other key holders that enabled this change. The second example that comes to my mind is the city of Hamburg. Hamburg used to be the a hub of online or browser games at some point, and the city recognized that this as a very fast growing sector that needs support that will lead to job opportunities. So it set up an office whose job was to help the gaming companies in any way that could. And the first thing they did was they set up an investment team, thinking that investment or money is the first help they need. They went to the companies in 2012 and asked them, what help do you need? And money was actually not even the first top two priority. So what they asked was a subsidized or affordable office space in the middle of the city that enables people to commute easily. This was obviously pro-COVID, like pre-COVID. And then the second, they needed people. They couldn't, because Germany had such strict immigration laws, they couldn't they couldn't get the required talent, especially the experienced talent that would enable the growth of the gaming ecosystem here. So the city of Hamburg actually went to other EU countries canvassing Hamburg as the place to be, and also when enabled or facilitated easy immigration for talented gaming individuals to come in for at least 3 years to enable the system. This had a huge impact, and we could see like 200, 300 people companies in Hamburg in a short amount of time. So it's not necessarily money that is needed to grow the ecosystem such as this. And since you mentioned regulation as part of this panel, I would like to give this one specific example of a skill-based gaming in Berlin. It's called Game Duel. And when I worked with them, and Germany, in Europe also, there was a similar time when the definitions of gaming, skill-based gaming, real gaming, it's all convoluted. So there was no clear messaging as to what is what. And the government then set up a body that actually certifies the algorithms of that first defined what is skill-based gaming, what is real money-based gaming, what is casual gaming, that provided the vocabulary and definitions that makes it clear to investors, players, and the entrepreneurs, right, to start. And then it went to the point of also evaluating the algorithms of these companies to make sure that they are fair, they're not biased, and they're actually skill-based gaming, and do not promote any other interests, which helped the investors to also invest in this ecosystem because they knew what they were investing in. So these are the three examples I would like to share with this panel to show the changes, positive changes that can come out of the involvement of government agencies specific to industry like gaming. Thank you.
Thanks, Balaji, for sharing some of those examples. And I must say that, when we talk of Europe and, how the government and many of the others are looking at gaming and esports, what comes to mind is, in November of 2018, the Prime Minister of Denmark, when he launched the Counter-Strike Go esports tournament, and he addressed the fans. This Prime Minister Lars Rasmussen, and he said, and I quote, he said, "You have been training for years and years to be where you are. And along the way, you have probably had to explain yourselves more than once, convincing people that you're not wasting your time. But now I hope your explaining days are over because you are sportsmen. You're truly sportsmen following your dreams." Right. So I think, gaming leading to esports, right? A casual gamer, eventually becoming so good at a game that he can be truly representing, being able to represent the country. Of course, in games which are esport playable, and you raised the entire discussion around what qualifies, a game on which esport can be played, what is the level of skill. So like any other sport, the ability to be able to create a fair playing field for different people to compete would lead to that. And I think India, is also extremely excited about gaming. And Prime Minister Narendra Modi himself also has talked about gaming multiple times. Most recently, when he said that we should have a lot of games that are created on the basis of what is true to India. Indian folk, based stories. And I must say that the Atmanirbhar Bharat campaign, which is there, will all add to seeing the emergence of a strong India when it comes to gaming, and therefore the importance of a conversation like this. But having said that, I'm going to now come to somebody I think who is the most visible face in the country when it comes to talking to government on a sector, on the ABGC sector, really representing the holistic sector around animation, gaming, and the head of Technicolor in India, Viren, would love to hear from you on what are some of the areas in which you see the role of government, particularly in emerging sectors like this, which are creating tremendous number of livelihoods and will continue to do so for a long time.
Thank you very much, Rajan, for that flattering introduction. We are together on this, amongst the CII and other associations that are trying to shape thought in an area that I would still say is relatively new in the media and entertainment industry. Animation and visual effects came to India 50 or 75 years after the main players in the rest of the world, and I think gaming is probably going to make that gap even shorter. So it's a great time for this conversation. I think we've seen a lot of discussion that's gone around various groups, and government is influenced by the voices of citizens, by the voices of press, and the voices of media. And I would applaud conversations such as this. And I'll refer to one that we had a week ago with the government in Karnataka, because the discussion is an exchange of knowledge, and Balaji's already brought that into the conversation. An argument, however, is an exchange of ignorance. And I think we are seeing plenty of that around. So the more panels we have, the more discussions we have, and the more knowledge we bring on either side or all sides of the table is really welcome. With that, I wouldn't like to go into, we've already seen the reports from KPIT and everybody else on the opportunity. And while the last 5 or 7 years looks amazing, I think the next 5 or 7 years have been under projected, because what happened in the last year, 2020, is actually given a huge fillip to the number of actors that we have, which are both industry actors as well as the consumers themselves. So I think this question that you've raised is really, how can the government be an actor, and what should their role be in evolving the storytelling for games? And I'd like to start by saying that one of the big pain points that we have in terms of developing scale, and I think that's the conversation that's really the most pertinent, is that like the government's job is to build roads and highways on which there is greater traffic that goes past. And the present government is engaged with ports and other infrastructures that will be used in the future. So also, I think it's really important that the digital highway that games requires, and I think that's happening already with 5G and the other rollouts that are taking place, is a really important step forward. In Bangalore, we've managed to get the state government to invest, to sanction 47 crores, out of which they've already spent about 30% of that money, putting up an infrastructure. And what does this actually afford? This allows people who are startups to come into a plug and play. They get discounted rent. They don't start putting their money into tables and chairs and broadband connections and storage and networking and cables and stuff like that. And I think that's really important if you want to see more and more people come into the game. The second thing that's really important, I think, is to understand where the funding should happen in terms of the development of games, because it's really important to create a greater climate and a greater activity around getting people to create IP that would become very successful. Even in a very mature industry like television or film, the success rate of ideas that actually go to screen is still quite a competitive arena. So, I mean, how do we leapfrog that whole 100-year journey in the game space by doing that in a few years' time? And I think that's where I think, the kind of events that I think you're hosting in Delhi now, I think would be really important for people to be able to get together and find out how they can collaborate and make that happen. There's been a great conversation that we had in Bangalore, because there was a talk about the fact that 4 or 5 states have already taken a view against certain types of games. And we had a very cogent discussion. We had an all-party meet brought together by the Ministry of IT, BT, and S&T, which is the same ministry that we went to 12 years ago when I put an FAQ for them to go to the cabinet and explain why animation, games, and visual effects and comics needs a separate technology policy. And this morning, there was a fantastic event with the Deputy Chief Minister of the state and all of the people around him, because with NASSCOM, they brought out a very pioneering engineering R&D policy, because they want engineering R&D to become a big thing in India. If I was to tell you where my learnings and inspiration first came from in this story, it was I was invited by the Copenhagen Business School about 15 years ago to be in a project called Imagine, which is a center for the creative industries and institutions. And their issue was that when people graduated from learning about games, they went away to other countries and were adding value to other economies. And so the project Imagine was all about how do we actually create something that will make games happen in the country. And you referred to the Prime Minister's statement a few years later, but what they really did was they figured out that whether it's Hollywood or Bollywood or the games ecosystem in other places, in Korea, etc., these don't happen by accident. They happen because there are certain things that create the fertility for people to come in and create if you like, an ecosystem. And I think at the heart of that, the government's role is to seed that ecosystem by providing hubs, by providing infrastructure on which people can come and do what they do best. Because a person that is a programmer for games, and Balaji talked about the long journey of Dhruva, and I must give you a parallel that when we were able to provide the infrastructure and the talent for Rockstar to start in India, when that deal was done, I couldn't convince them that they would have more than 40 people in India. They wanted 20 in assets and 20 in animation. And I kept saying, you must provide a bigger space for this is bigger, and you don't get it. We only want to have 80 people in the country. And we had a deal with them for 3 or 4 years. At the end of the deal, they had 420 people, right? It's a slightly larger number than 40. That is what infrastructure, and that's what seeding does to talent and technology when it comes together in our part of the world. And that case study, I think, is the one that we should be taking, along with several others, Rajan, that you see in the association that you chair. And I think that's the understanding and the discussion that we need to bring into it. I'd like to say that what we did was we tried to create an FAQ last week for the government, and we actually told them, look, what is fair play? Fair play is if there is no money laundering. Fair play is if one person is playing against another person and not a bot or a machine. Fair play is if you can create the KYC and you know exactly what's happening. Fair play is if you are making sure that the digital world is actually giving you a better view than if people were playing these same games offline and you'd never know what would happen. And having worked for 13 years in the wines and spirits industry, I can tell you that if the government banned wines or spirits or cigarettes, there would be a bigger market for this and they wouldn't get the taxes. So if we really wanted to understand what we do not want to allow games to do are things that are already licensed, right? Or Meghalaya or wherever they are. The rest of it is pretty much, and I think we had some really, really enriching conversations from the likes of a former Chief Justice, brought out various things, and I won't go into that conversation here of right from 1957 to 2017, we've had some 5 or 6 landmark judgments from the Supreme Court on describing what this is. So I think this needs to be brought in, this context of the case studies of that Balaji was speaking of on the international front, the work that I had done with the Copenhagen Business School, what we learn. I mean, we started, I was in this company started off 11 years ago and we had 40 or 50 people in games. And today at Technicolor itself, we average about 600 people that have been doing the FIFA game for EA for all of these years and many other titles, right? From Rockstar to Ubisoft to Sony to everyone else. And it actually is a point to ponder that with the right development and the ecosystem of our talent here in India, why is it that we cannot create more IP? Why is it that we should allow monies to be going to other countries? And the government can understand that, I think, as long as we have the quality of the conversation that I believe this panel and other panels will have. And I know that Invest India and MIT and other departments of science and technology, etc., can and should come together in order to, as I said, make sure that the argument actually gives way to a discussion.
Thanks, Viren, for that very interesting and very comprehensive, knowledge sharing of the evolution of the discussions between industry and government. And I think the most pertinent point, amongst all of this to note is that all of this is so much of a state subject today, right? And different states, need to get, need to understand, they will all have a different level of progression towards, businesses such as this, and therefore conversations like these, happening not only at the level where where CII and IDGS is having today, with leaders from around the country, but really at the state level, going deeper, understanding the challenges on the ground and finding solutions. Yesterday we did have the Chief Secretary of Telangana also, who was there, who was, progressive state, talking about the challenges actually come from the ground. When the police comes back and to them and says that, over this, people are fighting and there's money laundering and things that are happening, that they get forced to take a position, that would not work. So I think a lot of discussion, is something that is important, in this area. I'm sure we'll come to that and mature, as we see this massive opportunity of becoming part of the global supply chain. I always like to call it like that. Your example of 40 to 420 really talked about it in the area of gaming, and that brings up many other aspects. And on the product side, and really creating IPs out of India really requires risk capital, requires an environment where young people can step up, and get the startup ecosystem going. And we're really privileged today to have with us the CEO of Metis Startup Hub from the Government of India, Jitendra Vijay. Jitendra, I will move to you now, for you to really share your thoughts, because this is one specific area, of course, where startups can play a very large role directly, but even ancillary industries, digital advertising and many others that tend to work in tandem, along with this. Would love to understand how, as government, you're viewing this industry and other startups in the digital ecosystem particularly. Over to you.
Thank you so much for the invite to be part of this panel, and it's really great to hear the views of the experts and the doers, right? So being part of the government, it's always interesting to engage with the stakeholders and really see their vision of how they're driving the industry. Now, talking a little bit in the context of how we have viewed gaming industry historically. So games have the epistemological root of a negative connotation that it's frivolous, it's not really there as a value add. But if you look at where gaming has gone today, not only is a source of entertainment, but a source of learning, a source of empowerment, a source of nation building, a source of knowledge transfer, and a source of archiving the history and the traditions of a country. And that's what our Honorable Prime Minister Modi says when he talks about transitioning of Indian heritage via these new media and mediums that we keep talking about. But within the context of policy framework, of course, we deviate and divert between skill-based gaming versus chance-based gaming, and how the government has been seeking to regulate them under different frameworks. And but where we stand today, and I'll take some examples from my time back in the US, that if we are looking at the value chain of the gaming industry, right, all the way from the developers to the content, to the devices, to the connection, and to the users, right? So someone developing it, having the right content for customization, then the devices on which these games are to be transmitted, then the connection speed, and then the consumers. India has one of the largest demographic dividend in terms of the percentage of population under the age of 35, which is close to 70%, right? So heavy users of social media in India, right? Second thing, in terms of developers, we are a very tech-enabled, tech-adept, educated young society, and software developers are plenty, and they're working on a lot of these amazing concepts and transitioning our ancient knowledge into the gamification. With the geo advances and the devices that have become so economical, every nook and cranny of India has the access now to these networks. And with the 4G and 5G coming in, I think the gamification experience will become better. And with the evolution in AR, VR, and all these technologies which are allowing for personalization, as well as a deeper engagement in the whole experience, I think that plenty of opportunities exist for startups across all these elements of the value chain in terms of how the content is developed, in terms of the type of games that are structured, in terms of the user experiences. So what we are seeing at MSH under Mighty Startup Hub, so we work close, we have a network of close to 2,000 odd startups here in our network of startups. And when we start segmenting it, unfortunately, the focus has been more on the well-defined areas of agri-tech, health tech, mobility. But you will see these individuals who used to be in the gaming industry initially thought that the fruits of labor were not being realized there. And then hence they took their expertise and talents and deviated to the other areas where they could actually make more money or quicker money or more deeper engagement. But now we're seeing more and more startups and more entrepreneurs are coming back and saying, okay, there actually exists a wide network of an ecosystem, especially when you look at the recent successes of some of the startups in this domain, when we're talking about the sports betting and other things, and the changes in rules and regulations in Europe and US, which are allowing for more of these industry-friendly frameworks for self-regulation. And so I think there's an opportunity for startups to work in this domain very actively. But I think Dr. Garg is here with us today, and he is the expert on the government frameworks and policies. So I will let him piggyback on what I was saying, and I'll let you do the transition, because I think as a startup CEO head here, we operate under Dr. Garg's purview, and we constantly debate and discuss the policy frameworks that are created to support our startups. So I'll throw back with my opening comments back to you and take it forward.
No, thank you, Jitendra, and really very encouraging to see people like you sitting in government, envisioning and helping the country realize the future of the opportunity, that exists in startups. And you made a very pertinent point, right? A lot of gaming startups actually start with the passion of gamers, people who game well, and then they start looking at this from a industry and business perspective. But the success rate of a game, whether it is in India or anywhere in the world, is extremely low. And particularly in India, because monetization, is still a long way off, when it comes to the Indian consumer compared to, of course, global benchmarks. It makes the journey even more difficult. And I think, it really sets, therefore, the tonality for us being able to invest in those startups from a little longer term point of view, probably give a little more runway, because ultimately it's a creative industry, and creative industries do take, a lot more hits and misses before it comes there. But the interesting part, on deriving value over a longer period of time is the example that we've had from Chinese companies. Especially when we see large Chinese gaming companies, they derive their value very interestingly from the large base of a country like India. Like as I said, 13% of the games downloaded in the world are from India, and the deep monetization of the West. So I think there is an opportunity now for Indian gaming startups to really come in, occupy that space, initially create games at least that are played by large number of people before we look at levels of, monetization. And I think what Viren rightly said, we are starting late on this journey compared to the rest of the world. So of course we have a lot of catch up to do, but we'll always find a fast Indian way to be able to make that happen. Through our group company Jet Synthesis, we've really taken the bet on, particularly skill-based gaming simulation cricket game for India, right? And simulated cricket gaming is extremely difficult, to play. Of course, we have a game with Sachin Tendulkar called Sachin Saga, where you actually go and play as Sachin Tendulkar. Then, of course, we have the real cricket franchise, and together we have over 120 million downloads. Tens of millions of players playing every month, and we've been able to create that large base in a skill-based game that will, define what is an Indian factor when it comes to electronic gaming. Particularly taking off from a sport that is played, on the ground. But just like that, I would suggest that there are so many ways in which we can really create an arena for startups, particularly in gaming, to come together, and see how that can be supported. And I'm sure there are many industry players who would love to work closer with you, as we move there. And before you came, I was talking to Dr. Garg, and he said, I will have the last word, and I promised him that. And you rightly said that, his understanding of frameworks of policies as frameworks, I think, will be very important, for this industry to ultimately, shape itself, moving to the future. So with those words, Dr. Garg, I'm going to bring you in to really share with us, how you would be looking and thinking about this industry as we move forward.
Thank you, Rajan. I have been closely trying to understand the very large perspective that you have on this subject. And I have also heard Balaji and Viren and Vijay on this subject. So, issues related to regulating the gaming sector or the esports sector to actually promoting the industry per se in gaming and the opportunities that lie ahead. I fully agree with most of the points, but let me talk about each and every factor in a very short time spent that we have uh, on this panel. So I'm that government is cognizant of the fact and it understands that there is a great amount of opportunity that lies in under this industry. We had a very strong animation-based industry supporting the both the Bollywood and the Hollywood that has the right talent to create games for the future. We have a demographic advantage both in terms of numbers as well as the age on our side, which are the right market that can be addressed, which is right now being captured by many of the international gaming ecosystems and have taken a large advantage out of it. The amount of distress that was created by when we actually banned 57 apps and one of them being a gaming app, the most noise was around that app being banned rather than many other 56 others. So we are cognizant of the fact that the opportunity that lies in India around the gaming is there to be encashed. India is a huge market. We are, and the last point that you, Bain, very rightly pointed out, and you also talked about creating a right economic environment for the product industry in general and the gaming industry in particular to be promoted in this country. So let me touch upon briefly on each of the points. As far as the regulation is concerned, it is a very, very difficult topic to address. Let's understand that the difference between gaming, esports, or the betting industry or the laundering around the such is a very thin line, very difficult, and one particular ecosystem graduates from one has to be monitored on a real-time basis, and that's a very, very difficult subject as a regulatory framework where government has to regulate each and everything is a very difficult subject for government to handle. And I think there the challenge has been, and the banning of many of the activities in India has been there. So we have received representations from each and every industry on this sector, both from in MIT as well as in the INB ministry. And my personal view is that rather than focusing around government being a regulator, we have to take the help of the industry bodies like CII and others to create a self-regulatory environment which is robust, strong, and foolproof, where we actually are able to take piggyback on this and promote this industry and take economic advantages out of it. That's my personal perspective. As far as the issues of personal data and other such subjects which also form part of the gaming industry, I think some of them will be solved by the Personal Data Protection Act that will come in future. In respect of promoting this industry as such and the whole product ecosystem, government came with the national policy on software products in February 2019 with the whole idea of a 10x growth and a 25% contribution from the product sector in the whole IT industry, taking it from here from a 190 billion odd industry to a 350 billion, where 80 to 90 billion comes from the product side by 2025. Under this policy, there are the challenges that are there, whether the lack of rupee capital, the lack of environment to create products, whether gaming products, and targeted focus, creating products that are India-centric and in line with Indian ethos and culture, and thereby not only being instruments of entertainment, but also on cultural development of this country, are some of the key factors that are being addressed under the national policy on software products. We came up with the first center of excellence dedicated to gaming, where CII has been a partner in Hyderabad, and it is coming up well. And there is a whole ecosystem mainly driven by the industry, partly funded by the government, to create a gaming and industry. This has been integrated with a large number of our AR, VR activities where we have established center of excellences. We are also in some early, in final stages of creating one more center of excellence in the Northeast, where the culture and environment is little different from the main terrain land, and where also the substantive talent exists to create such industry. As far as provisioning of the rupee capital, government has had a number of discussions on this, and the whole challenge around the rupee capital is that involvement of our FI ecosystem, whether it's an EPFO or the NPS or the LICs of the country, they have been averse to investing in the venture ecosystem directly or indirectly. And that is a large amount of capital that the Indian ecosystem misses out, and so lacks a rupee capital. The software product development fund of 5,000 crores, whereby creating 70 daughter funds, thereby bringing the total of 25,000 crores into the ecosystem, is under very advanced discussions, and where 1,000 crore comes from the government, 4,000 crores come from these FIs. So if this fund goes through, and I'm very hopeful it will go through in next few months, that will change the game around the rupee capital, where if understand the venture capitals other than from the US and China have been mostly successful because of the pension funds investing a substantive amount of money in such funds. 1% of a total Indian FI fund will be sufficient to solve the problem on ground. The last point on the subject which has been discussed is that whereas there has been a strong industry ecosystem that has, or startup ecosystem that has been developed around the product space, but there are very few players in the gaming industry. Let's understand that once we solve the regulatory challenges and provide a right market access to such players, as you rightly said, Rajan, that there are gamers which are very enthusiastic to develop products on gaming. And the post-COVID, where the digital is taking over many of the activities, if you don't have a person on ground to watch a cricket of a test match in Chennai, so it's more like a animation game that is happening on the media rather than people enjoying it on ground or in the live environment. So if you have a replica of this on a gaming platform, I think there are many takers in the post-COVID era, and there's a right set of opportunity that lies. But what is required is today is three things. We require a right regulatory framework. We require a responsible framework being actually being monitored by the industry itself, where the gaming is done under Indian ethos, Indian culture, and where dirty money doesn't flow into this. And we need to understand that once we create games that promote Indian ethos, we and have some examples, uh, uh, we will create a right environment to make people confident that this industry is there to deliver rather than creating uh, disruptions in the systems. And I'm sure that whatever activities are being taken under the national policy and software product, our discussions with the CII gaming body, as well as many other industry bodies that have come, have evolved in near future. I know at least 4 to 5 that are actually taking care of these sectors. And and also government being educated on the subject. The lack of education for the regulators is one more reason I say that this industry. So such conferences, such deliberations, and more involvement of policymakers in the subject, I think we are going in the right direction. We are there to encash the 170 billion, a substantive percentage of the 170 billion industry that exists. And we have a great opportunity ahead. And we, both from the government as well from the industry together, can make it possible that this industry gets a footprint in India. Thank you, Rajan.
No, thank you, Dr. Garg. I think your optimism, your tonality of showing that how you are a catalyst, for change, and a positive role of the state. I think all the comments you have, shared today resonate so well with the private sector or companies like ours and others who are investing into this ecosystem. And to your point of getting more rupee capital in, I think family offices like ours and many others, and companies that have historically built businesses around textiles, like ours, we build textiles and packaging, are now investing significantly in creating digital products which will not only cater to India but also to the world, and leverage the Indian capabilities and capacity, in making that happen. And as Brian and everyone, and also you rightly pointed out, it's just about having the right infrastructure, having the right ability and the framework, within which companies like us can then grow and really, make the country proud. You talked of cricket and its growth in the pandemic. As I said, we have over 11 crore people who have downloaded the game and 1.2 crore people playing the game every month. We saw a 30 or 38% jump, both in amount of time spent as well as the number of people who started playing those games, especially when the pandemic hit. So I think what would have otherwise taken 2 years to happen has happened already, and I think therefore the little extra discussions that we are having right now on ensuring that we continue to move together in the right direction. So thank you again for all those wonderful thoughts and suggestions. We don't have much time left, but so what I am actually going to do is I'm going to go around, all four of you, and really ask you to, if you were to point out, two very important things that are critical at this point in time. Maybe that collectively we should be, addressing and getting, resolved, right? Because sometimes, like you rightly pointed out, and everyone's pointed out, it's a vast subject. There are thin lines, so where does one really start? So if we could look at two things that would be critical for India, say in the next 3 months, 6 months, for us to be able to address, what do you think, that could be, and what really can we do to make that happen? I still remember when we did the first India gaming show, under CII in 2017, and I had invited the Honorable IT Minister of State who had come there. And he said, I always told my kids never to play games, never to do that. But after coming and seeing the size of the industry, seeing the opportunity, one thing I'm definitely going to go and encourage is my children to go and play more games and see if they can, become sports person. So I'm saying, like what you rightly pointed out, it's about, educating people about what this whole industry is about, breaking the myths that exist. Today professionally, you can become decision-making skills. There's so many advantages that one can have, but responsibility by game developers is so critical. Self-regulation is critical, and therefore, this whole conference over 2 weeks is called Gaming for Good, Build in India, Build for the World. We're really defining what gaming for good is. We are defining what responsible gaming is, and I think as an industry, we want to make that happen. So, anyways, I would go back to Balaji. And then Biren and Jitendra, and back to you, Dr. Garg, again to have the last word. But 2 points, if we can address, right away, what would those be? Balaji?
Hi. From my standpoint of view, or according to me, 2 things that comes to my mind is a clear definition and vocabulary around gaming or different aspects of gaming, be it skill-based or chance-based, like rightly some of the co-panelists said, and having a platform to discuss those, right, between the government bodies and the industry bodies. Second, that would be, gaming at the end of the day is a people's business. People make good games, players play games, right? And for a fledgling industry such as India, I think, like you rightly said, a global supply chain perspective where it enables talent from all around the world to come and facilitate that growth. Right now, I don't know if the rules have changed now, but when we needed like senior gaming talent from around the world, we had to pay a minimum amount of money to get them in. The talent didn't actually need that money, but it was a regulation that made it unaffordable for some companies, right? So these are the 2 things that comes to my mind. Thank you.
Great points. Thanks, Balaji. Biren?
Hi, thank you very much. And Dr. Garg, amazing listening to you and your vision on behalf of. I also want to thank you for the Northeast initiative that you've taken. I'm very proud and happy to be the chief mentor of the COE there. So I'm giving some time, and I think there's a whole opportunity for us to work through STPI Next and many others. Coming to the question that Rajan has posed, I think there are 2 things, Rajan, that we could perhaps think of, right? Number 1 is, can we draft an advisory from CII, which includes, MITI and the MIB together as a advisory note that can go to all states in India. So rather than have their start from scratch individually as issues come up or some police complaint, etc., and then the home ministry in that state gets worried, why don't we just nip it by just making sure that all the states in India get an advisory saying these are the thoughts on the table of the opportunity from a revenue perspective, an industry perspective, foreign exchange perspective, etc., and give them that advisory. So maybe we can all work together and make that happen. And the second is that since Dr. Garg very correctly brought about the self-regulating mechanism, let's try and give some shape and thought to that. I think it's really important for us to say, what would self-regulation look like? We have, just taking the media example, we have very successful models in advertising that have gone on for more than 2 decades, and even the government refers to that body. And on the other hand, we have established government censorship bodies, for example, for films that have always, taken a big toll on the government and the industry in trying to make sure that they understand what citizen wants, what India wants to do with regard to culture, et cetera, et cetera. So, and you've seen more recently that the same steps are just being have. Why should we wait for this matter to escalate before we can actually, give it a proactive framework and work together on those bases? So, based on the topic of today, I have many suggestions for you, but based on the topic of today's conversation, I think these 2 would be amazing. And then as CII have a center and state council that could be formed through a a specific event that we create where that self-regulation proposal and those advisories can be discussed and debated, and it could act as a matter of creating clarity ahead of time.
Thanks, Brian. I think both very valid points. Something that we've been also thinking about, and I think some part of the work has already been done. But to accelerate that and address it, in the shortest time span possible, would really help. And I'm going to take you on and take you up on that. Thank you.
Happy to help.
Yeah. Jitendra, for you, what would you think are two of the things that we could focus on?
You know what? I think what we need is Balaji, you, and Birenji to get more involved with the Mighty Startup Hub because our startups need support from expert mentors, investors, and corporate leaders in the gaming industry. If you want to develop the gaming industry further, we want the stalwarts and the ones who have done it to actually come and get engaged to the new generation of builders, creators, and promoters can be incentivized, can be guided, can be supported. And of course, it'll be a great benefit for you guys as well because it's an opportunity to see some young talent, innovative ideas. So it'll be really appreciated if the industry leaders can get involved as mentors, investors, and promoters and champions of our startups. So I think the biggest ask I have is for the three of you to get involved with us at MSH in a more meaningful and deeper way.
Great. I think you made both your points into this one strong point, and I fully endorse that. I think there's a far greater need for all of us to work closely because that passion and the talent that is there is the one that will create outstanding results globally. And interestingly, in the global gaming industry, that has happened, right? It has happened where two people sitting somewhere in some corner of a country have created multi-billion-dollar enterprises. And gaming, unlike many of the other industries that have created unicorns, does not really necessarily need to have, a large, investments, and sometimes it can happen much faster, much sooner, provided everything else, falls in place. So that's one end of the pole. The other side might be, completely different. But so thanks for those inputs. And again, final word to you, Dr. Garg, on what do you think?
Most of the points that I think that I want to have been talked about either by Balaji when he talked about it, clear definition around gaming, esports and all that, and creating complete vocabulary that can be very helpful in the regulatory framework. Viren talked about an ecosystem to be created and a right set of advisories that go from the industry bodies for taking a holistic view on the subject, and by rather than states taking a very diversified views on the subject. And two very important points, and Vijay rightly said that the industry champions helping. But to add on to this, what I want to add on is to remember the soap opera industry evolved because of the success of the Ramayana or the Mahabharata in the early 90s or the late 80s. Remember this. The whole soap opera industry evolved around the success of these two very important shows. If we can pro bono create a state of art game around one of our mythological literatures or one of our deep-rooted cultural connects, which can demonstrate the strength of the gamification of very important events in the development of humanity. This will go in a long way to actually create confidence around this industry. That is first point that I understand, is that can be a game changer. This we at one of our center of excellence, whether it is being promoted by Bahrain or CII being a partner in our Hyderabad COE, can actually provide you that platform to do it in any way you require, and we are ready to provide you that support. On the second aspect, a self-regulatory framework needs to be evolved at the earliest to actually promote this industry, where the regulation and promotion goes hand in hand. These are two of the additional points that I want to bring on the table for consideration of the industry and the champions like you, Rajan and Viren and Balaji for consideration. And we either from, I take the liberty from Vijay's side also, that we either from Mighty or from the Mighty Startup Hub are there to provide you all support that is required in those aspects. Thank you, Rajan.
Thank you. Thank you for so beautifully articulating those 2 points. And I just want to re-emphasize your point on the first point that you talked, of the Ramayana and Mahabharata. I'm fortunate to be on the Indian-Japan Business Leaders Forum, which Prime Minister Modi leads, as the CEO forum to Japan. And when, Prime Minister Abe and Prime Minister Modi were there, and my counterpart there, from the media entertainment industry was Hirai-san, who's the chairman of Sony. And both of us had to talk and present to the two prime ministers what we can do as two countries for the future of the media and entertainment industry. You'll be pleasantly surprised that the same subject came up. Because if you take Japan or a lot of Southeast Asia, a lot of the deep-rooted, spirituality is driven from the Ramayana and Mahabharata. So those audiences, are not only limited to countries like India, but also countries which are the world's largest. So Japan is an $18 billion gaming industry. So there is tremendous amount of knowledge, etc., that they want to derive in a gamified manner, from all of these skill sets. So it's very interesting. It brought back that memory of about over 2 years ago when the same discussion had happened, and we'd love to take you on this thing on seeing how we can, help build some of these, stories and some of these, India-based, kind of gamified products that would really do good not only for Indian gamers and Indian industry, but also play a key role in other global markets as well. So thank you for that. And I think, one thing that I'm taking across the board from what all of you all have said is really defining gaming, creating a framework for the self-regulation, engaging industry more with startups, really, and being able to see how we can together, have more conversations like this, and move forward. How the hour has gone, I don't know, but we've actually, it's been chatting for over an hour, and we could go on and on. But I just want to thank each one of you for sharing such invaluable insights. I don't think, as I said, we could have got a better session, a better conversation, and we hope this is the beginning of many more to come. And I will tell you from CII and from the Indian Digital Gaming Society side, we will take all of these inputs, seriously. We will ensure that we are able to, make gaming, responsible, see how it can really, put India on the global map on account of an industry which is, quickly emerging and resonates extremely well with the youth, not only in India, but around the world. So once again, thank you, each one of you, and really appreciate your time with us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Rawani. My sincere thanks to all the panelists for your time and valuable insight. Our special thanks to Dr. Garg for joining the session and sharing his valuable thoughts. With this, we come to an end of first session. The next session will start at 4:45. Thank you all. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good afternoon, Mr. Shetty.
Hello? Hello?
Yes, please.
Hi. Yes, ma'am.
Good afternoon. This is Sangeeta from CII.
Hi, Sangeeta. So, am I audible clear enough? I would put on the
Yes,
video.
yes.
So, just to be very sure before we start, one moment.
Okay.
So, just let me start the video. Okay, one moment. I think.
Please take your time, not an issue.
Am I visible now?
Yes.
All right. So, I'll.
Thanks for joining.
My pleasure. It was. I think this is a very innovative and a new way of doing any kind of. The first thing for me is an exhibition and a conference happening this way. This is something never thought or seen before, but it is impressive.
Yeah, but CII has been doing this thing, both exhibition and conferences, last year, April,
Yeah,
in
yeah,
different sectors. I think
yeah,
first time in for this gaming sector.
yeah. I think for the IT industry, this would be the first time that is happening. Gaming is surely just a small part of the overall ecosystem, but yes, and that's a popular one. So if the footprint has to be better, I think the right product line has been picked. So it's very good.
Yes. So we will
So
start our session. Start our session around 4:45.
4 to 5. Okay.
On
So we
time.
still.
We will start on time. Yeah,
Okay.
we
So the
still have
flow.
time. Yeah,
So
sure.
the flow
Sorry,
would be.
sorry.
The flow would be I first have the introduction and then I just talk about the brand and the products that I would want to talk about for a moment, right?
Yeah, sure, please.
All right. Okay. I would just go for a mute.
Yeah, true. Fine. Mr. Sethi?
Yes, Sangeeta.
Shall we start?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, sure. Good evening, everyone. We are now starting our next session, that is a corporate talk. Today's corporate is ACES Technology Private Limited. The expert of today's corporate talk is Mr. Vinesh Shetty, Regional Head, Component Business India and South Asia, ACES Technology Private Limited. Mr. Sethi will talk about networking and gaming. Before I hand over the platform to Mr. Sethi, I request participants to send the questions in QA session in CI High, and we will take them up at the end of the session. With this, I request Mr. Sethi to kindly take the session forward. Mr. Sethi, please, over to you.
Thank you very much, Sangeeta. Good evening, everyone. I think before I start, I think I should compliment and show my appreciation and gratitude to the CII team for making something work in this fashion. Since the pandemic, I think we all are uncertain about how things would go. But I think this is a very interesting and innovative way of holding conferences and still being updated about the new products that are coming up. As you all are aware about ASUS as a brand and the kind of product lines that we for almost last 32 years are bringing in. Even our flagship ROG product line has been there for the last 12 years. The footprint that we have on the gaming segment, to be honest, I think is very robust. And that gives me a kind of honor and privilege to share with all of you what this entire segment holds and how much promising it is. So why would brands really focus on this vertical, and why so many in the last couple of years have started to bring in all the different kind of gadgets and gizmos in the gaming segment? So it is promising, it is profitable, and it is making a lot of audience move towards it. As you are aware, ASUS has started in the year 1989, and the first product lines that we bought in was motherboard. I think for every product, a robust motherboard is needed. After that, we have added close to 17 different product lines within the motherboard categories, or you call it the graphic cards or in the gaming segment. So what has happened over the year is understanding the target audience and the users per se, consumers precisely. We started getting in a lot of products, and then we also started to learn and survey the end users. And we came to know that gaming is one very important segment, and globally gaming has been a more than almost a $50 billion business in terms of pure hardware as well. So I think it is very promising, and it gives me the opportunity to share with you all the kind of product lines that we have. So today, as the topic has suggested, I will be talking about few products that we have from the networking space and few from the gaming space. So if I take the product line in the ROG, everything right from your motherboard, your graphic cards, your wireless, your monitors, everything comes under that. But today, let's be very precise on these two segments. Otherwise, I would probably take a half day to share all my product lines. To start with, gaming as an industry has evolved in such a way that users are now accepting this product line or this category. So what we thought is we would bring in from the most basic entry level products. So we have a Zen Wi-Fi AX1800. So the 1800 Mbps is not a very conventional router. So I have some products with me. I will share you on screen. So this is the product. So this cube is a Wi-Fi router. Now, earlier when you used to get the Wi-Fi router at the place, it used to look like few antenna coming out and looks very bad. But now see the design part of the product. It's been made in such a way that it can be placed anywhere in your house. So what is the specific benefit of this product? So there is antenna. It is not that it is without antenna, but it is placed in a very specific way in the box itself. But the unique feature of this product is it's a dual band router. It's Wi-Fi 6. So the latest generation of the Wi-Fi product line is in. Most importantly, it's an AI mesh router. So most mesh routers have their own specific features. but this is the AI mesh, which is more intelligent. So artificial intelligence is already in this. One more unique feature is like now the question is, I place one device, will it cover my house? Don't worry. We have a set of 3. So the pack comes with 2 or 3. So you can actually place it in different rooms to have a seamless Wi-Fi network. So this was one of the first product updates I wanted to give. Now, to my gamer friends who like a lot of RGB lighting and they want a very dedicated and discrete gaming port. So we have something called as the Rapture GT AC 2900. So now if you check this, I don't know, most of my friends can see this, but the lights are changing. So this RGB effect, which is predominantly controlling the gaming market at this moment, even the routers that we have are with RGB lighting. So the user doesn't feel out of place, a gamer doesn't feel out of place for this product as well. And it's a powerful 2900 router. So you can cover close to 3000 square feet of area within the home. Plus the AI, the ASUS app software gets you a discrete port, a game port, which will help you connect to your PC or your laptop, giving you a direct discrete connect so that there is no lag. So this is from the ROG family specific. Coming to my third product, this is one of my favorite products, to be honest. I call this as the sleeping spider. So if you can see this, it's too huge, but this comes from the ROG family. And the most important feature of all is uh, it has boost channels so that the game boost is happening. It has discrete 2.5 gigahertz only designed for, which is called as the game port. So this is only designed for gamers. They have a discrete line connected. You have 2 USB ports. The range that it covers is close to 5,000 square feet. So, and it has a 1.8 gigahertz in it. So it is very robust. It can handle any hours of gaming. And this is how the gaming space, to be honest, is covered in the networking. Okay, these 3 are not just the products that we have. We have a huge range of Wi-Fi products that we have to offer. So not just the gaming community, but amateurs who are interested in gaming, but they need permission. So the Zen Wi-Fi is there. So the Rapture is there. So these product lines help us connect with our users, and based on the target audience, based on the spending capacity or the requirement, we have different layers of products available for our users. Now coming to the a product line which is very from where we have actually started, but why would I show this product? So just to share that this is the Z590 gaming plus Wi-Fi motherboard. So now you have to understand that a motherboard is specially designed for gamers, plus it has a Wi-Fi 6 enablement already in it. So it means that the product is already foreseen as a rightful product for gamers and has all the build quality. So now this model that I'm sharing with you is the tough gaming. So if you see all these kind of casings that are there, is basically to help the product to work in a more efficient way. So this is on the 11th generation already, backward compatible. This product is already probably in a week's time should be available in the market. So this is the first time I have the piece in my hand, and it is still not in the market. So I thought, let me just share with my audience out here. Most of the products that have been designed has been designed with the longevity in mind. So even if it's the PCB, it's a 6th layer. Even if it is the components that are used are all Japanese connectors in it. So the design wise, we have an expertise in making the kind of robust product that we have. Next product that I want to share is, yeah, it comes from the graphic card family. But here I have some new technology that I want to share with you. So generally you see these 3 fans. So this is the GeForce RTX 3060. the OC 12 gig graphic card. Now, when we talk about graphic card, we also have to understand that there are some kind of innovations that a brand would put into. So what we have done is, generically, every one of us knows that the fan spins in a singular way. It's one direction, okay? It's every fan, all three fans move in the same direction. We have done two big improvements in this. One, these two fans on the side will move in a clockwise motion, and the center fan would move in the anti-clockwise. The cooling is not affected, but the voice decibel is reduced to a drastic level, making the fan more quieter. Plus, if you see these fins out here, okay, so the fin and the board connectivity, the height is increased by 2.7 inch. So the entire slot, when you increase the height of it, of the fins, it helps to create a better heat dissipator. So when I talk about a product, we all have to understand that how discreet and dedicatedly we are looking and focusing on the target audience. Whenever the product is coming up, we always would want to see the product reaching out to the end user. They enjoying the product, and they were able to talk about the product for at least 5 years. Yeah, that is how we want our audience to take the brand ASUS as. Not the least, but the headphone that I'm using is an ROG Punk. It's a gaming headset with the AI noise cancellation already in it. The best feature of this is I can unplug the mic, but still it has an inbuilt mic as well. So it is a voice noise cancellation as well as an inbuilt mic is already present, and it is Bluetooth. So talking about the product line, we have invested a lot in the gaming space. A lot, I would say, in verticals which most of the brands wouldn't have thought about. So just sharing with you, we have a projector. Okay, everyone has seen a projector, nothing big, but we have a projector that was designed for gamers. So it is almost 1200 luminous, a full HD, and it has wireless projection. So a 180 full HD projector was designed only with gamers in the mind. So we have a division where we have monitors. We have 32-inch monitors. We have 65-inch monitors. We have console gaming monitors. So as a product line, we have covered it completely. But then when we thought about it, why restricted to 65? Why I can't make it 1 meter? Well, sorry, a full 120 feet, 120-inch screen. A gamer should enjoy it on a plain wall. So that is how the entire product designing and the evaluation happens. There are few more products, but I don't have the showcase out here at this moment. But our gaming peripherals, we have the best of the product lines in the gaming peripherals. We have the power supplies. We have power supply starting with 650 hertz, right up to 1200 to 1600 hertz. We have coolers specially designed with the logo that can be changed on the cooler. So there are a lot of innovations that we have brought to the product, to the industry as such. And to be honest, it's an ongoing process. It's a lot of efforts have been put by our R&D team. Our sales team is duly putting their effort to reach out to the audience to make this presence and product available. And I hope the way this product or the market is looking at, I think we would be in a better shape in the coming futures. Gaming as a segment has grown dramatically, I would say. 10 years back when we start in 2006, when we were hosting the gaming competition, there were very limited players who used to come down to play. Now I think the entire ecosystem is working together. So, and with the CII coming into the picture, I think it will be a very good booster for this segment. This was more about the product showcase that I had to share with you. More details can be found on our website. Anyone has any specific questions or anything that they want to ask, I think I would be open to that as well.
Yes, Siddharth, is there any questions?
Sir, no questions have been received yet.
All right.
Mr. Vinay, if you want, you can continue further also, if you want to say something else.
Sure. So in terms of our products coming up in the coming months, I think we will be focusing on more on the capture cards. We'll be having, this is, to be honest, just one division of the product line that we have. We also have our division for notebook, which has a long list of gaming notebooks that are coming in. We have gaming desktops that are there. So in terms of our vision for India, in terms the gaming segment, I think we were the first to come in into this market where most of the brands didn't even have the visibility of doing a gaming product line in the country. It shows the kind of attention that we have towards this market. We can be very specific. A router coming as a gaming router, who would think about it? We would just speak about the frequency, but a gaming port coming up discreetly. So the kind of attention and details to the end user's requirement, I think that is where the brand is bringing in a lot of innovation. There are a lot of new product lines that would come in the coming months. The pandemic has changed the ball game at this moment, but I think that is not going to delay us any further. I think Siddharth, Prakash, I think this was the point that I wanted to share with all of us. And yeah, I'm really grateful to CII for giving us the opportunity to come and share our products. Honestly, there are only 5 or 6 products that I could share today, but on a better time frame and more products line are there lined up, and we can share that to our audience. Hi, Siddharth, Prakash. I think that's what I wanted to share today.
We have checked, sir, there is no other questions.
Sorry, can I couldn't hear that.
So no questions have been raised on this.
That's okay. So we'll wait for a while, and if anyone is still putting in, then we would respond to it. Yeah, hi everyone. I think if we still don't have questions, I would request all to be dropping out any of their questions to ASUS team. And if any further thoughts they have, they can discuss with me directly. Hello? Still audible?
Mr. Sethi, since there is no questions, what we can do if there is any
Yes, sir.
questions, we will post you through email and
Totally
later
fine.
on we can address. So if you
Yep.
permit, can we wind up this session?
Certainly, sir. No problems to that.
So thank you very much for your time and patience, I can say right now. And thank you for all the participants. So here we are ending the end of the session and the end of the day 2. And thank you all. And tomorrow we will start the session again at 3 p.m. So see you
Thank you
tomorrow.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much, everyone. Thanks. Bye-bye.